We don't even have to count, Sarah.
We don't, because we are together at last.
Yes. Once again, reporting in from Sarah's couch in Brooklyn.
Which is where we do most of our Ask Me Anything.
Yeah, right, because we're together for whatever reason. Now, the reason we're together today, this is many weeks ago that we are recording, but I was traveling, and then Sarah was traveling, and
Then there was a snowstorm.
there's a snowstorm.
Supposed to be together.
Then it was Easter, or it's going to be Easter. And so we're recording this episode on, I think it's airing April 8th, in the past, because otherwise it wouldn't get done.
We're very busy and important.
Yes.
We're not really. I just am headed to England to see my aunt.
Oh, that's nice.
I know. Well, I haven't seen her since before the pandemic. I haven't actually been to England since before the pandemic. So
Oh, that's right. You were supposed to go.
actually, you're going to be like, of course, this is a very Sarah story.
Yeah.
Kate Claiborne is actually going to be like, of course, this is a very Sarah story. So I was supposed to go to England in April of 2020.
Yeah, it would have been 2020.
And I made plans with Louisa Darling, and we were going to go together. And because we were both turning 40, and we were like, all right, we're going to do this thing. And we made this big plan. And then in March of 2020, everything just collapsed around us. And so we said, okay, no problem. We're gonna cancel our trip. We'll go in May. We'll go in June. And I went for some reason to look for my passport for some reason, and my passport had expired. So I wouldn't have been able to go to London anyway.
That's insane.
Because the day I pulled it out of the safe, I would have been like, oh shit, my passport is expired.
Wow.
And that would have been sad because Louisa would have been stuck in London. But I mean, not sad for Louisa, but sad for
Kind of
me.
sad if you're planning a trip with a person who isn't there. I mean,
Anyway, my passport is now renewed, and I'm heading to England to see my aunt, who is an aging English woman. And yeah,
that's nice.
I'm taking my daughter to see her. And yeah.
Has she ever been to England before?
Yes, she has. But she was little.
She was so little.
We actually went the summer of 2019.
Oh, I think I do remember that.
Right before everything went chaos.
Right.
And then, but now she's a pro because she came to Australia with me and New Zealand. And now she just thinks that this is what people do. They just take international trips all the time.
Some people do that.
Which apparently is true for her. So, but speaking of older women, I have something I'd like to bring to the class. So I had on my shelf in my office a copy of Catherine Falk. Everybody, I think that we've talked about Catherine Falk on the podcast before, at least a little bit. She was the owner and publisher of Romantic Times magazine, Jen's favorite magazine. It's like the New Yorker and Romantic Times
together. Yeah. I actually have 25 years of it and I haven't really done much with it, but maybe I'll have a reason to soon. But, maybe I need to put them in order and start scanning, essentially, because I'm like, what am I supposed to do with all this stuff? This is crazy. So it's not indexed, everyone. It's just...
You bought it from eBay, right?
I bought it from a woman on eBay who basically was like, I have all these and clearly this is someone who was really taking good care of them. And then I realized, you know what I mean? In order for them to be useful, you have to sort of index them. And I just have never done that. So, maybe a summer project for me.
I mean, the Romantic Times was this remarkable thing, though. Yeah. It seems wild that somebody loved romance enough that that they would invest so much of their time, energy, and frankly money into building a magazine that was essentially a romance review.
Yes.
And I guess the closest thing I would compare it to is something like Rolling Stone, because there were little articles at the front. I mean, it was never Rolling Stone the way Rolling Stone was, where the articles were remarkable, unpacking the politics of the United States, and then here's a review of the latest Police album.
Right.
But there was always somebody on the cover, although I assume that was an ad. Publishers probably paid for that space. And then there were like interviews inside or like little stories about romancy stuff inside. And then, but probably 2/3 or even 3/4 of that magazine was
Just interviews.
straight up reviews. And it was like a star system. And they had professional reviewers. I remember Kathy Robin was the historical reviewer. And she reviewed, if you got a 5-star review from Kathy Robin, actually, there were no 5 stars. It was the highest was 4.5 stars. And maybe you could get a 5. But I remember there was like 4.5, and then there was like 4.5 gold. And that was it was like my immigrant father was in charge of rating romance novels.
Listen, nothing's really
Like
quite
it's
good enough.
never perfect.
Yes, right.
So
Now you can be a doctor too.
exactly. So anyway, Catherine was always everywhere too. And I don't mean to speak of her in the past. I believe she is still alive. But she was always everywhere.
Yeah.
Anytime there was a romance anything. And then there was the RT conference, which was wild times. Which was both so where RWA was for romance authors kind of exclusively.
Right.
RT was really for readers.
Right.
And readers would come and they could meet authors, and there was the Mr. Romance conference or contest. So Catherine knew everybody. And it's sort of like legendarily, if you were new to the genre, you might get like a text, like a message from her, an email, or at the time when I started, I was on Facebook, and she messaged me on Facebook and was like, please send your phone number. I'd like to call you. And you just sort of felt like, oh no, what's going to happen now?
Right.
And then this like lady would call you, and she would sort of tell you her lore.
Yeah.
And you felt very much like you had been blessed by
Sure.
this woman who had a ton of both power and influence, and also real love for the genre.
Yeah.
Anyway, at some point in the world, Catherine wrote a book. And maybe she wrote more than one, but
She's written a couple books about how to write a romance that I have one of. There's like, everybody, I have a small collection of books. I collect books where people talk about how to write romance because I'm fascinated by them.
So this is copyright 1982, and it's called Love's Leading Ladies. So to sort of paint you a picture, this is 10 years into the modern romance novel.
Right.
And it is significant. It is, there is, I don't even know, now I'm sort of distracted by it, but it's, 300 or so pages, and it's maybe, I don't know, 100, probably less, like 85 famous romance novelists, and each romance novelist has like a little biographical text written by Catherine. And as part of it, they are asked a number of things. Their astrological sign.
Listen, it's like that Happily Ever After Society book, but a lot crazier.
And then like, how they got into it, how they think about their books. And then every person is asked to give a recipe, their favorite recipe. And I think this is a sort of...
Yeah, this is really interesting.
It's a real, like, how do you do it all and keep the house kind of
completely, right? Like
question.
Right.
So I just want to share, Jen, a few of the gems from this book, because I think, since we're together and we're doing an AMA, this is the kind of episode where this would be well received.
Appropriate, yes.
So I have to say the first one that I have is Jude Devereaux, who we all know. We love Jude Devereaux here at Fated Mates. And she talks about writing romance, and she did not. We've had Jude Devereaux on the podcast,
yes,
and now I sort of wish like we'd read this first because I would have liked to have had
follow up
say it here. But so she talks about writing The Enchanted Land, her first romance novel, and she says, "I wrote The Enchanted Land because I couldn't find a book that I wanted to read. I wanted a heroine with a mind of her own and one who had decided a purpose in life other than being raped." And then she says, personally, I wouldn't want a kidnapper and rapist in my house. I'm the old-fashioned type.
I mean, if that's the old-fashioned type, then me too.
And I was like, what's happening here, Jude Devereaux? So, Jude, if you listen to our conversation with her, she's a real straight shooter.
Yeah.
So this actually doesn't super surprise me, but she is a Virgo. And, and her recipe that is included in this book, and everybody, I did tell Jen that, like, now I think I want to do like a little, like,
she's going to make these recipes.
I've always been like, oh, I don't do videos. Like, I'm not interested in doing videos, but like part of me wants to make every single recipe in this book. Her recipe is for sausage cake, which sounds disgusting,
sausage cake.
Maybe Eric would like to eat it. Then I want to talk about Fern Michaels.
Yeah, this is wild.
Yeah.
Right?
We didn't know, Jen and I didn't know Fern Michaels started out as two people.
Yeah.
And then what did you discover?
Well, so then I went to Wikipedia and was like, what happened there? And
Mary Cutskit and Roberta Anderson.
yeah, so Mary and Roberta wrote together as Fern Michaels, named after, according to this, a plastic fern in one of their offices.
Mm-hmm.
It was a wild time, everybody. I don't know what to say.
As I said to Jen, it's actually incredibly difficult to kill a fern, so I don't know why it was plastic.
And so then, according to Wikipedia, in 1989, Mary took over, and Roberta just wrote as Fern Michaels on her own. Then she died recently. So we're talking then for however many decades, just like the one of them wrote as Fern Michaels.
Okay, so let me tell you the story of Mary and Roberta's first book. First, we had to get rid of our sexual inhibitions. We were two women who couldn't write the word thigh or breast without being horrified. I'm glad we decided to write
chicken. Would that be funny if that was our recipe? Sorry, everyone. Okay, I'm not sorry.
I'm glad we decided to write a real pornographic type book the first time out.
Oh my goodness.
We needed to learn to free ourselves, and the first book, which has never actually been published, did the trick. We called it The Liberated Stud. Actually, although it's graphic, it's quite pretty in its sexual passages. The story is about 5 housewives of varied backgrounds who are sexually frustrated. They place an advertisement in a local newspaper for a Playboy, and they get an answer. Naturally, he's the liberated stud.
That does actually sound very before its time.
I would read this book.
I would read the hell out of it. Although, you've got to imagine, they called it pornography, and it's probably 2 sentences.
Listen to this. No, he's the world's greatest and sexiest and tenderest lover. He liberates all 5 housewives.
Yeah, sure, of course.
And we use this book as a guide to future love scenes in all our other books. Will The Liberated Stud ever be published? Only at a price we couldn't refuse. So, challenge accepted, publishing.
Somebody where'd Fern leave her papers?
I know.
Right? My goodness.
And then I just want to share, and then we'll be done with this, but I want to talk about Rosemary Rogers.
Oh, yeah.
Who,
Sure.
Rosemary Rogers, notoriously, everybody, when she got real famous and was making a ton of money on her books, which were making a ton of money.
Yeah.
She bought an apartment in New York City, and she basically started going to Studio 54 every night.
Good for her.
She was just like, this is the life I have been aiming for. Okay. So she says, everybody's been asked for their recipes. I didn't even tell you what Fern Michaels is. Oh, Michaels' recipe is fried crab, everybody. But so Rosemary's asked for her recipes. Please remember, this lady goes to Studio 54 every night. Brown rice is one of Rosemary's favorite dishes. She swears by its nutritional benefits.
Sure.
She is frequently seen dining with a handsome escort at Maxim's or Regine's in Paris, where she indulges in a dinner fit for one of her heroines. No recipes available for all that.
Wait, are you going to do the mushroom one?
Oh, I don't know what happened to that one.
Oh, good. It was disgusting, everybody.
But everybody, just so that you know, Sandra Brown's recipe is guacamole, but she does say that she likes vanilla ice cream with Kahlua on top, and she drinks sangria almost every day.
I mean, bless. Good job.
Exactly.
Bless.
So that is Love's Leading Ladies by Catherine Falk. And if you're interested in more of those recipes, maybe follow me on Instagram.
Oh,
This
yeah.
could get me to like
Sure, to actually like
To-
go down that road.
to-
Yeah.
video status.
I mean, that does sound fascinating.
Anyways, welcome everyone to Fated Mates. I'm Sarah McLean. I read romance novels and I write them, and I am fascinated by old romance authors cooking.
I'm Jennifer Prokop, a romance reader and editor, and today we're here, and what we're going to be doing is on our Discord, we put a kind of call for like AMA questions, and so some are like for recommendations, some are do you have a question for us together, some questions just for Sarah, some questions just for Jen, and then we said, does anyone have questions just for Eric? And we're going to start with this because it's really, really funny. And a lot of them were just kind of like, you know, thank you and you're awesome. But there was one, and you know what, everybody, I'm sorry, I didn't even say like, what's your name or anything. So probably we would have forgotten to tell that anyway. So there was what somebody said for Eric, what song do you want to hear played on the organ? So we called him down here and we were like, we asked him the question and he actually, everyone... chortled, I would say. Like, I would say...
Which is rare, everyone.
The sound that came out... That's why I was like, we got to ask him this one. It was really funny. And then he sort of was like, none. And then he kept thinking, because, of course, that's a really provocative question. And then he said...
Be Aggressive by Faith No More, which, everybody, is a song about blowjobs. So...
He's like, and I don't know why, but that's the first thing that popped into my head. So...
And what I would say is, if you know anything about Faith No More, I feel like Mike Patton just got a chill and was like, I need to re-record Be Aggressive on the organ for some strange reason. So...
You know, my friend's son, his husband is like a organist.
Oh, really?
That play the organ.
Well, maybe you could ask him.
I might have to do that. I might be like, Laird, can you please, for Eric's birthday, fire up your organ and record Be Aggressive by Faith No More? I'm sure, is there sheet music for such a thing? I don't know. I'm going to find out, everybody.
An organ rendition sheet music? Probably not, but if he's like a real organist,
Sure, he could probably figure it out.
make do.
I mean, it's pretty funny. So anyway, that's a great question. And honestly, what an answer. What an answer.
What an answer. This week's episode of Fated Mates is sponsored by M.A. Wardell, author of Meetings with the Minotaur, the first in his new Love at Labyrinth Solutions series, an office mon-com, meaning monster rom-com.
Listen, if you have never read an M.A. Wardell book, I have always had a good time with every single one I've read, and he writes just like every single different kind of book. So I'm really looking forward to this. So what we have here are Magnus, our Minotaur CEO. He is very in control in the boardroom, in his life, and over the beast that lives inside his suit.
Is he, though?
Until Jamie Torres walks into his world. Now, Jamie, Magnus thinks is his new junior strategist, right? But what he doesn't know is that Jamie is essentially impersonating this high-level executive to impress Magnus. In fact, he is straight out of the mailroom. So the truth is, Jamie is trying to keep his professional smile in place while staring at Magnus's very amazing horns, his thighs, his everything. So, but you know, when push comes to shove, Jamie really maybe might be the guy to help land a huge new account, or will his lies be discovered and will he be sent back to the basement?
Oh boy, I can bet that horns will be involved.
They better.
Right? If you are also interested in how the horns get involved, then you can get this book, Meetings with the Minotaur, right now in print, ebook, audiobook, or with your monthly subscription to Kindle Unlimited. If your podcasting app supports it, you can click on the chapter title right now to be taken to buy the book. Thanks to M.A. Wardell for sponsoring this week's episode. Oh, here's one for you.
Okay.
Because we're never going to do a motorcycle club episode because I don't read motorcycle clubs. Not for any reason other than it's just not my thing.
Yeah.
All right. So I've just finished Joanna Wild's Reapers series and I loved it. The characters, the angst, the sexiness, the plot, all of it is perfect.
Yeah.
Would love another rec like this. It can be motorcycle club or not.
Yeah, I would say so. I have a couple of answers. Okay, so Joanna Shoup and I did a thing once on like sort of motorcycle club versus mafia. And I think that like Joanna's Mafia series, which is under her pen name Mila Finelli, actually I think would like sort of hit a lot of those same kind of beats, right? Like kind of the sexiness and the like edge of violence and that kind of thing. And she also writes like a real strong heroine, but often ones that are kind of like trapped by circumstances. And I think that's what a lot of the to me like the appeal of those books can be, the sort of like I'm really down on my luck for whatever reason, or like sort of this world is the only world that I have. And so I would say Joanna's, like any of Joanna's Mafia books, in particular, maybe there's this like New York State of Mafia series, because it's sort of like in the, like sort of small town girl kind of like falling into this world, which I think a lot of the Reapers books kind of have that vibe. And then in terms of like a straight up motorcycle series, I really like the Ghost Town East series by Amelia Shea. And she actually has a lot of different series. She has a first series called Ghost Town, then Ghost Town East. Then there is a series called The Reign of the Underground, and I've read all of them. She just started a new one. I can't remember what it is, but I read it. And I think the thing that I like actually about Amelia's books is that one of the things I kind of struggle with in is like in the subgenre is like I think it's really hard, like when you have the world is so small, right? It's the motorcycle club or the mafia or whatever. I think it's really hard to figure out how to make the books feel really different or interesting. And the answer is you do that by making the heroines really different and interesting. I think Joanna figured that out. I think Joanna Wild figured it out. And I think that Amelia Shea has figured it out. So when you read these books, it's like, the men are just like, I'm the president or whatever. I'm the road captain, whatever their dumb titles are. Sorry if those are real. But in the books themselves, like all these women who kind of like get involved in this world are really different. So I would say those are two authors that you should check out, would be Mila Finelli and Amelia Shea. Do we want to do a question for us? Wait, this is a really funny question. Okay. All right, ready? Okay, the question is, what would our lives look like if we were two spinsters living together in Regency times? What tomfoolery would you get up to? Well, Sarah would be making weirdo fucking recipes, I guess. I'd be doing laundry and laying on the couch reading. That's funny.
Well, I think that we are certainly, there is a sort of a chaos to me that you do not have.
Yeah, I'm real nosy though. You'd be like stirring shit up in the village, but I'd be the one like knowing all the what's what that's going on.
You'd be a good gossip.
Yeah.
A real Lady Whistledown character.
Yeah, I think it's the Midwesterner in me. Like I really do love to, chat with a local. Even like this morning, I'm staying at a hotel in Brooklyn, and the guy making my coffee, and I'm sort of chatting him up, in the hotel. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty quiet around here. And he's like, well, it's March 17th. He's like, well, if I think a lot of people are going down for the crowd. And I'm like, oh, or the parade. And I was like, oh, sure. And then I'm like, oh, I'm from Chicago. And I'm telling him about dyeing the river green. And then he's like, I don't really like a crowd. And he tells me a whole story about like this girlfriend he had once where she did like a crowd and she wanted to go see the fireworks. And he's like, and I thought, I'm new. I like this girl. We're going to go down there together. That's okay. And then he like kind of as the crowds got thicker and thicker, he just said, she's not worth it. And like,
she's not,
like just
brutal.
Yeah. He's like, my fear of crowds is bigger than whatever I feel for this lady. And so he just peeled off, and that was that.
You got to respect it, I guess.
And I found myself thinking like, I'd be really good at the, chatting up the locals. Like, listen, if a stranger came to town, I would know what's up.
You'd know immediately who they were.
I would know. Yeah, I'd be the person finding that.
No, and I would be sort of the local rabble rouser. I'd be in the parade.
Yes, you would be. I'd be like, oh, the parade's happening. God damn it.
I'm going to stay home and read my book.
Sarah, put your lace cap on like a lady.
Oh, here, this person also has a very quick one for me, which is I need to know which of your books used ship rope for sexy reasons. And now, okay, the reason why this came up is because when I was in Rhode Island for the event about historical romance with Adriana and Joanna and Caroline Linden and Ginny B. Moore, there was a question that came up about we played a family feud, but make it romance. And so we broke into teams where like there were authors and then people from the audience were part of the team. And one of the questions was, we asked 100 people what you would tie someone up with in a historical novel.
Sure. Okay.
And I hit my button first, obviously.
Yeah, you're like, bam.
And I said, a ship's rope. And it was like answer number 4. Number 1 was a cravat, everyone. And I mean, fine. But in the Sarah MacLean universe, that is not accurate.
Sure. 50 Shades of Cravat.
And everybody, that book is called, or to this person,
Yeah.
because a lot of people already know this, that book is called Brazen and the Beast. And it is the second in my Bare Knuckle Bastard series, but you can read it out of order, I would think.
Yeah, I think so. I knew the answer to that question.
Everyone enjoy yourselves. There's a very famous line that the hero says to the heroine in that book, and it's related to the ship's rope, and enjoy yourself.
Nice. Okay, let's do one for the both of us. Okay, I'm doing a presentation to Maryland and Delaware librarians, mostly public and academic libraries, in May on romance. What are 3 things you would like them to know? That's a great question. So for the purposes of reader advisory, it is, I think, really important for librarians to know about the happily ever after, essentially, like what makes a romance a romance. Because, someone comes up to you, a librarian, and says like, I want to read a romance, and then you tell them about, The Fault in Our Stars or something like that, right? So knowing the difference between a happily ever after romance, whatever that looks like, versus there is a relationship in this book. I think a lot about how, outsiders think that feels limiting. But, we know that the happily ever after can look a million different ways. That doesn't just mean marriage and a baby. That could mean a lot of different things. But really all it means is like whatever it is that these 2 or 3 or however many people want together, they are committed to doing it together, right? To being together.
The other thing I always feel is important to say to people who don't know a lot about romance is, I guess it's twofold. One is that romance is there's a deep bench to romance. And because there is such a deep bench for romance, there is really something for everyone in this world. I think one of the barriers to entry for librarians and booksellers in romance is, and I hear it all the time from booksellers about romance, especially in independent bookstores that don't carry a lot of romance, is this sort of sense of, it's so big.
Yeah.
I don't know what to carry. Like, I don't know where to begin with somebody. And I think that one of the valuable things for librarians to know is that basically, if you're interested in literally anything, there is a romance out there for you. And so discoverability, obviously, knowing that is a big hurdle for a lot of people who do book recommendations and discovery. I would say I would want them to understand and know that there are cornerstone places where they can go to learn more about the genre, but also to like find those books. Like, what are the books that should be on your shelf? Where can I get best books of the year lists? Where can I get respected lists of books about, whatever, a certain type of person, a certain identity, a certain place, a certain time period? And I think obviously this is not a plug for Fated Mates, but we exist, Smart Bitches exists. Like, there are a number of places where people can go to get those lists and to explore.
I would say the third thing is okay, someone coming in the door who is new to romance is probably going to be driven by, like right now in time, either Bridgerton or heated rivalry, right? Like we're seeing new pathways opening in front of readers, right? That are going to like kind of bring them into the genre. And so, if I was a librarian who knew nothing about romance, I would sort of trust my diehard romance readers to already know how to maybe discover new books. But what I would be doing is trying to be able to answer that question of, okay, I really loved Heated Rivalry, the show. What can I read now? I really love Bridgerton, the show. It feels like what I would want to do is really think strategically about who is going to be coming in to me as a librarian, right? And then, and for your academic librarians, I mean, I think there's some people doing academic research in romance, but I think a lot of this stuff that's interesting that's happening in romance is like really being driven by TikTok and Instagram and podcasts and things like that. And so academic romance, it exists and is out there. And they, obviously these are people who are also deeply invested in the genre if they're bothering to write about it. But people coming in who are like, I didn't think I would like romance, but I sure did like heated rivalry. You should be prepared for that, right?
I feel like I have heard that from so many people who are like, have you watched Heated Rivalry? Do you know about Heated Rivalry? And when I'm like, yes, it's a book.
Yeah.
They're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like they really are shocked to learn that there are books that feel like this.
This week's episode of Fated Mates is brought to you by Kay Lynn, author of Lights, Camera, Not. That is KNOT, not everybody.
So Kay Lynn is someone we actually all know. This is the Omegaverse pen name, and this is the debut from the Omegaverse pen name of Kayla Gross, who you all know if you've listened to Fated Mates. We think Kayla's great. She always writes these like high heat, very sexy contemporaries that are that feature plus sized heroines. So I'm a big fan, and I'm super excited for this one, which is a high heat MMFMM Omegaverse romance starring Iris Walker, who is an actress, and she's landed a lead role in a romantic comedy called Notting Hill with a K.
A plus.
Complete with an all-star cast and crew, and finally, the chance to prove just how good of an actress she really is beyond the roles that she's always been pigeonholed into. Except Iris's heat suppressants have just worn off and she is going into heat hard. And the director, cinematographer, writer, and leading man are all her scent matches, which means that they may have come to make movie magic, but they're going to be making a lot of magic in other ways too.
Teamwork makes the dream work, Sarah.
Listen, if the cover is any indication, this is going to be a blazing hot Omegaverse romance for anybody who is excited about that. I certainly am.
So if you would like to check out Lights, Camera, Not, the first in the Angel City Omega series, it is available in print, audio, and with your monthly subscription to Kindle Unlimited. If your podcasting app supports it, you can click on the chapter title right now to be taken to buy the book. Thanks to Kay Lynn for sponsoring this week's episode. Okay, this is a great question. It says for Sarah only, but I think we can both talk about it, which is, okay, someone said, I find it very awkward talking to my favorite authors at book signings. What is the best way for a fan to not make that experience awkward for the author?
It's not awkward for the author, is my answer. I think we are so grateful to meet you at book signings and to spend a little time with you. And we appreciate that you've made time in your day for us. Mm-hmm. I mean, there is no... I mean, I would say the awkward experiences that I have had with people at book signings are often with other authors. Like it's the reader author experience is not awkward at all for us. We are so happy to meet you, and I'm not going to tell you you shouldn't feel awkward, but I hope that I can allay and assuage some of your feelings about it by telling you that, like, we are not feeling that awkwardness.
Yeah. Part of the reason I picked this one is I've been seeing something like fairly horrifying on Threads, which is authors reporting that what people are doing is printing out like bad reviews from Goodreads and then like
Yeah, I saw this too, and what?
I know. And so I guess I would say, but that's
Why
not
would they do
awkward. That's
that?
just being mean. And I think that's like more than anything else. Like this is a person who, if you're meeting them in a public venue, right? Like they're, giving a talk or they're, at a bookstore with a book coming out or they're at a book con, these are authors who have said like, I want to do this. I want to meet fans. So I will say this, I really love going to book cons. And what I really like to do is, you're going to see huge long lines for some authors, right? Because of course, you're there to see your favorites. But one of my favorite things in a way that I have really found like interesting, good books is by going up to people with like a shorter line or, with no line because there's so many people. And just what I often ask authors is I say, like they have several books for sale often. And I say like, well, which one is your favorite? Tell me about it. I feel like the way for me to make that, because I have that same awkward thing. Like Sarah's always like, I don't even often tell people like I'm from Fated Mates. Like, what if they don't know? And then I have to explain and then it's awkward. I'm feeling awkward too. But if it's an author and someone is asking like with genuine curiosity, right? Like, tell me about your books and which one is your favorite. That to me is, I would imagine an author would love to answer that question or talk about, the writing experience. So one of the ways I do that is really by like meeting the author where they want to be met, which is about the books that they have, written. Okay, this is an interesting question, and I think we're gonna do this because we care about it. Okay,
That's a big one.
yeah. Okay, so it says, can we talk about the history of the paperback formats for romance? So essentially it's like kind of the trade paperback versus the mass market paperback. Were other historicals ever in trade, right? Like, or did they stay in mass market? And I would say like one of the things you should know, everybody, is that when it comes to like mass market, like the size of the book is about the price point on your end, right? Like a mass market paperback was a lot cheaper than a trade size paperback, which is cheaper than a hardback book. But that also means that the margins are different for booksellers. So, when it comes to a trade paperback, you can sell it for a lot more, but its actual printing costs is not a whole lot more.
Right. So trades existed obviously before the pandemic. And the goal of moving the books from mass market to trade, Berkeley started it.
Well, no, wasn't it? Who did the Hating Game?
No, it happened before that. So Berkeley moved contemporary romance from mass market to paperback in the early 10s. And it was Julie James, actually, weirdly, who I'm going to talk about later in this episode.
Yeah.
But it was Julie James, and it was sort of this like moment where we all kind of like lifted our head and were like, oh, Julie, who had been published in mass market, was being moved over into trade. And we all sort of knew like, oh, something is happening. Kate Noble was moved right around then too. And it was a big talk, and sort of, I would think it was sort of right when my first book came out. So I would say like it was like 2009, 2010 when this all happened.
What I remember about that is it was the first time my local indie bookstore actually had a romance.
Because it was worth putting on the shelf.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
right.
So Jen is right that it was about price point. And then right before the pandemic, there was a panel discussion about romance novels at Penguin Random House. I went to it. It was maybe February of 2019. And Berkeley kind of said, it was a bunch of different editors, and Cindy Huang, who was an editor at Berkeley, was on the panel, and she said, we moved romance into trade because contemporary romance into trade because we saw that YA readers were growing up and they were willing to spend more money on books than than adult readers were. And so we sort of thought, well, what we'll do is we'll follow that trend and move them in this direction. Now, you're right that The Hating Game, when it came out, which was an Avon book, came out in trade. And it was a big deal that that happened.
Well, and it had that like really distinctive cartoon,
that illustrated cover. It was the first of its kind. And then Berkeley quickly followed with Helen Hoang and Jasmine Guillory, behind. And so, those three really sort of made a big splash. This question includes a sort of sub question about 9 Rules to Break When Romancing a Rake, which was my first romance novel and came out in mass market in 2010, but then was re-released in trade
at some point. Yeah. I don't remember when.
2020 maybe? 2019 maybe? I can't remember. It was maybe the 10th anniversary of it. And that was because there was a kind of question of, well, could we move historical into trade? And it was a test balloon more than anything else. And that, the problem is that with a test balloon, you really need a new book.
Yeah.
And that book was, a decade old, and people had already bought it in mass and read it in mass. And so it wasn't a good example, but nobody else was getting trade at the time in historical. And we've only just recently seen historical move toward trade. Harper St. George was moved into trade.
India
Holton, Evie Dunmore, but I would argue Evie Dunmore was really pushed not as romance, but as historical fiction, like historical romantic fiction. And so now the mass is gone for lots of reasons, not the least of which is the printers over the course, a bunch of printers closed during the pandemic. And the printers, not every printer prints in mass. And so it was getting more expensive to print the mass markets and also be able to sell them at the same price that, readers wanted them in. And so now this is why I've just recently posted on Threads, like if you care about your old historical books, like books that you love in e or in print, but you don't have them on your shelf yet.
Yeah.
If you are the kind of person who ultimately will want them on your shelf, you need to go look on eBay and at library sales and at tag sales in your neighborhood and book sales, because the used versions of those mass markets are going to be the only versions of a lot of those books in print.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. But until the publishers start figuring out how they're going to reissue all of those books in print, those are also going to be the best versions of them. Because right now, for example, if you look at 11 Scandals to Start to Win a Duke's Heart, which is one of my books, the current printing of that, it looks terrible. The quality of the paper is bad. The color isn't bright. There's a ton about that isn't, it's just not a good printing of it. And it's because it's being printed, off market. It's not being printed by the kind of printer that it used to be printed by. So used books are going to become really valuable, I think, to the reader. I don't know if they'll become valuable like financially, but
sure, right. But it's to you, right? If you want one. Yeah. Fascinating and bad.
I want to talk about that X-Files question. This week's episode of Fated Mates is sponsored by Blue Box Press, publishers of Jennifer Lynn Armentrout's The Summer King, a beautiful new print bind-up of the 3 novellas in the Summer King saga, originally The Prince, the King, and the Queen.
So Caden is the prince. He is cold, heartless, and deadly, and whispers of his name alone bring fear to fae and mortals alike. He is the most dangerous being in the mortal world, haunted by a past he couldn't control, and driven by a singular desire.
What's it gonna be?
Sarah, that would be revenge.
Yeah.
There's only one person who can help him. Her name is Brighton, and she was raised in something called the Order, so she is really fully aware of what Caden is capable of. And so even though he claims to be reformed, she wants nothing to do with him until he leaves her no choice. So forced into an uneasy alliance, she is starting to glimpse the man beneath the ice. She just feels like she can't trust him. So when a enemy right, comes back into town. A nightmare hell-bent on destroying the world. This is Brighton and Caden have no choice but to continue to work together, but this, of course, makes it harder to deny the hunger between them.
Well, I'm sure they'll get over denying that hunger and we'll all be very happy for it. If you would like to read The Summer King and the Summer King saga, you can do that right now in print in this beautiful new bind up or in ebook or audiobook. If your podcasting app supports it, you can click on the chapter title to be taken to buy the book. Thanks to Blue Box Press and to Jennifer Lynn Armentrout for sponsoring this week's episode. I'm dying to find a book like the first episode of X-Files, and I don't remember the first episode of X-Files, but the second part of this question is any recs that involve reluctant partners while solving a mystery, which makes sense.
Yeah.
And while I don't have a sci-fi answer, I do want to talk about Julie James. Julie's FBI U.S. Attorney series has a terrific book in it. It's the first one. It's called Something About You. Did we read this?
I think so.
It's the one where it starts with her in the closet and somebody's murdered.
Yeah.
So we have a deep dive episode for this one, but it's a great rec if you haven't read it. It's about a U.S. attorney and an FBI agent who have worked together in the past. The FBI agent put 2 years of undercover and intense work into a case, and then it was dropped by the U.S. attorneys for, reasons. And he has resented her and blamed her for the fact that the case was dropped for, years. And now they're back at it. She was in a hotel room and there's a murder of a very important person in the room next door. And the two of them have to work together to solve the murder. And, there's a lot of danger, but they don't like each other. And they, Julie James does enemies to lovers in work, kind of every book. She's really interested in work partners who hate each other and then fall in love. But this is she's a great writer and this is a great book. And once you've read it, you can go listen to our deep dive episode.
There is I think I'm going to have a hard time coming up with this title off the top of my head. I'm not going to find the name but I will find it and put it in show notes. But there was a series of gay romances with an FBI agent and they were really fun. And I think that they would sort of strike that kind of vibe of, sort of were partners in crime. But so I'm sorry, the title of that will be in show notes. I will find it. That's a whole series. And all I remember is that the names of the titles have liquor in them. One's about whiskey or something. But it is really interesting that we've talked about kind of what's happening with romantic suspense, but there are a lot of romance mysteries happening right now. And it's interesting to figure out kind of what is different, because to me, a romantic suspense is a thriller, right? We're on the run, whereas a romantic mystery is we're really trying to solve this crime. And often I think they've drifted away from cops or FBI agents or whatever being the kind of main characters. But it is interesting to think about kind of those books. And one I read was there's an author named Jenny Elder Moak, I think. And there was a book called She Hasn't Got a Clue. And it's I don't think it quite has the creepiness of the X-Files, but they go to an island together of a wealthy, it's a wedding at a billionaire's island in the, Pacific Northwest. And there's a dead body, and the two they're guests of the wedding essentially go and solve the crime. So I think Sherry Thomas now is writing what I would consider mystery, and some of them have romance elements. So that's what I would say is maybe looking for those.
Okay, Jen, have you ever thought of writing a romance novel?
No. And I don't mean that. Here's what I would say.
I can't imagine why that doesn't seem appealing to you.
Well, I'll tell you why, Sarah. It is not that I don't have people running around in my head. I don't think that way. And I used to say something I think really kind of mean about myself, which is like that I was like, I don't think I have an imagination. This is clearly not true. I think I have lots of interesting and good ideas, but not about fictional people. And I think that like good writers or, fiction writers are sort of constantly filtering things through the brain of like, oh, like this snippet of dialogue. What would the character, who is this? You know what I mean? Like, and I just don't think I have that in me. And I think to be a good novelist, you probably have to have that going on up there, and I do not. And so no, it's I've never wanted to write a book, but I would not have said before I started editing that I think editing is creative work, but it is. And I think that's because like the kind of editing I do is developmental editing. So people give me their manuscripts, and what I'm doing is really looking at it and saying, okay, like what is the best version of this book that could possibly exist? And, obviously when an author sends it to me, they're like, here's what I have. And, it's like my job to say, right, here are all the things that are working. And then like, here are the things that aren't. And here's some ways that you might address that, not for you as like prescriptive, like do it this way. But if I give you some ideas, you're going to then take those ideas and run with them. But often my job is also to sort of be the person to be like, this isn't working. And often authors know that, but have someone come along and kind of be like, and then sort of offer again some suggestions. And is it cutting it? Is it putting it in a different order? So I don't have that in me, but I have this other thing in me, and I think that's a good thing too. But no, I've never in my life. And sometimes I think like maybe it'll come to me. I'll have a flash of it. Maybe. And then I'm like, no. I mean, no, maybe. No, really, no, everybody. Okay.
This person also asked about Duchess's book, so let's get that out of the way. Duchess's book is finished.
Woohoo!
It's finished. I don't know when it's coming out. That is above my pay grade. It was supposed to come out. Obviously, a lot of people have seen it listed for at different times.
Yeah.
I think it is probably coming out early 2027. I'm sorry, everybody. It actually took a long time for me to write it because I wanted it to feel right. But it is finished. It is coming. You will get it.
Yeah.
At least if you don't get it, it's not because of me.
You've done your part of the job.
Exactly.
That's funny. Okay.
I think this is interesting. I'm recovering from a year of breast cancer treatments, and we are grateful to still have you here, whoever you are. And I'm happy that you're in recovery. And I'm having trouble getting back into romance. I would love a recommendation for something where the main character finds joy, but also has to contend with sadness. Not angst, but sadness. And something that reads like
The
Gunkle, but with romance. Any suggestions? I think this is really interesting because I think there are a few authors who actually really nail sadness. I think Kennedy Ryan is an author who really nails sadness.
Yeah.
And I think Before I Let Go, which is the first in her current series, which the name of which I cannot remember the name of the series. Skyland, yes, the Skyland series, is a book where now the sadness here comes from divorce. There is mental health rep in this book. And these are characters who really have to contend with grief in the text.
Yeah.
And it's not, I don't think it's grief. I think it's, it's grief, yes, but it's also just sort of sadness about like where their lives have been, where their marriage has been. I mean, this is of course like a marriage in trouble book, or it's actually they're divorced at the beginning of the page. It's sort of a return to marriage for a divorced couple. But, Kennedy, she writes a really perfectly drawn character in sadness. I think it's not just about this series. I think she does this in a lot of her books. And so I would recommend Kennedy. If you haven't done Kennedy before, she is a good place for you to start.
I was going to say, especially now that it's April 8th or whatever. So Kate's book, The Paris Match, came out yesterday. And so this is Kate Claiborne. And in this book,
That's a good one.
yeah, Griffin is, it's really interesting because what you have are Griffin and Layla, and they're in Paris together for a wedding. And through sort of like the kind of setup is that the bride gets cold feet. And these two kind of feel in some ways almost compelled to like trying to like kind of figure out what's going on because of their various relationships to the bride and groom. And both of them, I think, are really dealing with like both the sadness of like kind of the life they wanted, and that they're in both in their like well into their 30s, and sort of right, like these are people who had things go wrong, and then kind of how you continue to deal with that because of the ways in which those failures almost continue to resonate, and then kind of the the goodness of being able to sort of maybe finally like let go of that in some way. So I think a Paris Match would be really a good one as well. And like it literally just came out yesterday.
I'm gonna switch it up and also recommend something a little weird, which is The Beast Prince by Mariam Pereira. I've talked about this book before. It's a paranormal, it's sort of a fantasy world where the whole world is run by these brothers who can command the elements. And the premise of this book is that there is a town, a kind of village that lives below the high castle in which the prince who can manipulate earth lives. And every year, and by manipulating earth, like the theory in the village is that he causes mudslides and he causes earthquakes, like he causes natural disasters. And so every year or every number of years, they send a virgin up to him to sacrifice. And basically as like tribute, with the idea that like this virgin will be able to keep them, this gift will be able to keep the village safe. And in this book, they send up a woman who is also the leader of the guard of this town, with the idea that like she might actually be able to vanquish him and save the village for a longer period of time. And she gets up there and she discovers him, and what we know as readers, but she hasn't figured out as character, is that he's lost his powers. And what I would say about this book, I love this book. I think it is so interesting. I think it is a great example of how complex emotion can be in romance, which is, I know, a little, silly when we're talking about paranormal or fantasy or this kind of like structure. But what I would say is this book is very heavy. Like he is contending with sadness over the loss of his powers. She is contending with like responsibility, the heavy weight of responsibility. And it is a book that feels heavy. It does not tell the story of romance as joy. It tells the story as like romance as healing. And I think obviously this is nothing like the Guncle, but if you're looking for something that will sort of shake loose maybe your romance reading, this could be it, because it's so different than anything that you've probably read.
This week's episode of Fated Mates is brought to you by Lumi Gummies. Consistent, mellow, and super delicious. Lumi Gummies are specifically designed to make you feel good, not stoned. Whether you're looking for an end-of-day de-stressor, a midday mood boost, or help getting the best sleep ever, Lumi Gummies has a strain that's right for you.
So I gummed up my knee when I was in London. I went to London for like a week, and I walked a bunch, and I carried a really heavy purse the whole time, which was really stupid. Like, when you're doing something, you're thinking to yourself like, oh my God, this is really dumb. I shouldn't be doing this. That's exactly how I felt like for 5 of the 8 days that we were on the island of Britain. The whole time I was like, I'm going to really, like, I could feel my knee sort of like groaning. And when I got home, it gave out. It was sort of like, okay, we're done with this now. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And Eric said to me, why don't you take a gummy? And I was like, oh, that's a good idea. So this is like, I'm not a doctor, but I did the like ice elevation, knee brace and a gummy. And it was like a perfect combo to just make me feel like really nice, and like it took the edge off the old joint there. And now I think things are getting better, but I did do that for a few days and I don't regret it. I'm going to be honest. So thanks, Lumi Gummies.
So perfect. If you are interested, Lumi gummies are available nationwide. Go to lumigummies.com. That's LUMI gummies.com and use the code Fated Mates for 30% off of your order. Again, that's LUMI gummies.com, code Fated Mates. Lumigummies.com, code Fated Mates. Thanks to Lumi Gummies for sponsoring this week's episode. All right,
Jen.
Yeah.
How has your work as a developmental editor changed you as a reader?
Particularly when I'm trying to read on my own. Okay, so everybody, that's a great question. Listen, unless you are paying me, I'm not going to read like a developmental editor. People are like, can you turn it off? I sure as fuck can. Like, that would be horrible. I would honestly stop editing if it was ruining me as a reader, right? But I would say like, I put on my editor's hat. Like, I really decide, like, okay, now I am reading this book in a very different way, and it just feels like more purposeful. It's like the difference between, I don't know, like you can be in the kitchen and you can be like cooking the best meal of your life, and there's an intentionality to that is different than when you're like, making a sandwich or whatever, right? So it is the rare book that like breaks through that way. And honestly, and this is kind of a bad thing to say, but it's true, I won't name names, but often if I'm reading a book and I can't stop thinking about it in terms of like through the developmental editing lens, it often is a book that is a failure to me, but where I can see the way the book could have worked, right? Or that I feel like the author is sort of, you opened the book an XYZ way and then you didn't like follow your own path. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's ways in which fiction sort of works and it's like a promise to the reader. And so like in a book, right? Like in kind of a pure plot, right? Like plotting, the inciting incident introduces a conflict to characters. This is a problem that they have to solve. And the impediments are each other, their own, whatever. And by the end of the book, then that problem should be solved, right? Like the inciting incident says, I've introduced some work to these characters. Now they have to do it. And if you introduce that conflict and then don't follow through on that, that to me is a book where I'm like, well, what are you doing then? If I can't turn off that voice, it's like usually a book I'm disappointed in. Here's a book that could have been so good, and instead it drove off into a different direction. And I'm kind of like, and why? And in a romance especially. So I guess I would say I don't typically let it, I don't know if that's a good answer or not, but yeah, I think that's a good answer.
Okay, super niche question, but what are some good romances set in Toronto besides those written by Jackie Lau, Uzma Jalaluddin, and Rachel Reed, all of whom are great? Actually, we confirm all of those are great, but I want more, please and thank you. Farrah Heron.
Farrah Heron is one of the obvious answer there, right?
Farrah Heron lives in Toronto and writes about Toronto.
Jenny Holiday.
Does she write about Toronto?
She does. Well, she writes about sort of the upper Midwest, but her Bridesmaids Behaving Badly series, One and Only, is a favorite romance of mine for a long time. That whole series is set in Toronto. It's funny because I was talking about Mila Finelli, and the second book in her New York State of Mafia series is the one where Vito goes down to Maggie's Winery, but he is a Toronto-based mobster. And there is actually a really great scene where he like takes her back to Toronto. And they have this incredible kind of time, and she is away from her like sort of little small town. And so that's also a really good one.
There are a lot of Vancouvers, but
Yeah.
I can't think of a ton more Torontos, although when we stop recording, I will remember all of them.
There's a pretty active Toronto romance writers group. And so maybe check them out. They have a really good website. They have an Instagram. And that doesn't mean that they're all set in Toronto, but I think it's probably a pretty good place to start. I also love Toronto. Clean Chicago. Call it in my
Yes.
What a city. This is an interesting question for you, Sarah. Is there an itch that writing contemporary scratches that historical does not? Market reasons aside. You've written Storms and then the one about the Duke with the sheep.
Okay. Yeah. I was like, the one about the Duke with the sheep.
I mean, sure.
Well, so I think, so those are two very different books.
Yes.
And I actually don't think that they scratch the same itch at all. The Duke with the sheep one, which is called A Duke Worth Falling For, I wrote during the first summer of the pandemic. And I wrote it without ever intending, like I knew I would probably put it up as an indie, but like I was never going to sell it. It wasn't on contract. It was literally just like, what if I sat down and I wrote something that would bring me out of this crazy world that I am in? And for me, whereas a lot of people would go, well, isn't that what historical is? Like, no, that's my job. So I think about historical romance all day, every day, because that's what I write.
Yeah.
So A Duke Worth Falling For was really about like, what if I tried something totally different, but like that I would love? Storms is not a romance novel, right? So I mean, it is a romance in the sense that there's a happily ever after, but like the itch that scratched was really being able to expand the world of characters. I'm very, very rigid when it comes to my romances about this is the story of these two particular dummies falling in love.
Right.
And while I hope that you're drawn to all of the secondary and tertiary characters in my books, like I don't want you distracted by them.
Yeah.
The way that I want you focused deeply on the main characters. And in Storms, I wrote a family, and it was great to write,
Yeah.
6 different characters who all had like real estate on page and all had important work to be done. And the romance, actually, there's no point of view of the hero in Storms on the romance side, because when I actually wrote that point of view, I felt that it took away from the story that I was actually trying to tell. So the itch that Storm scratched was that sort of what happens when I can tell the story of all these characters at one time. But I still much prefer writing 2 dummies falling in love.
My favorite thing to read.
Yep.
3 dummies falling in love. However many dummies, dummies falling in love. Yeah. Right.
I've never written 3, but never say never.
All right.
Jen, what's your favorite dinosaur?
I don't think I have one. Well, do you?
I mean, you're disappointing the audience here.
Okay, I will admit, okay, maybe I'll say T-Rex, but like not me because it's a dinosaur. Kelly used to say this thing that was like, okay, like think in your head about how like a T-Rex has like those little arms.
Yeah.
And so she would say this thing that always really made me laugh, which is like, when someone is like learned helplessness, right? Like, it's like a man, you tell them to go find something in the fridge and they're like, I can't find it, and it's like T-Rex arms, just like, and I do this to the kids at work all the time, right? Like, I'll be like, go find this thing in your locker. And they'll be like, and I'll be like, T-Rex arms, like, come on, like do it. But I guess, I don't know if that's a real answer, but I do think the velociraptors in those Jurassic Park movies seem very terrifying.
Terrifying, but also like queens.
Sure, yeah, for sure.
They're getting shit done.
Yeah, I do like those movies. Who is my favorite historical romance author of all time?
I mean, in person, it's me.
Well, obviously. In books too. I mean, that's
No.
that's hard to answer. I guess I will say this.
I don't know the answer to this question.
Yeah, I don't either.
Is it Julie Garwood?
I guess I'd say Garwood, right? I mean, but is that just like longevity? I've been reading Julie Garwood for so long, and I do feel like there's something in like my DNA that was Julie Garwood put there. But God, I love obviously Kleypas. I love Beverly Jenkins. There are Beverly Jenkins books that really stick with me. Jude Deveraux, The Old Heads. What about you?
Well, I mean, my classic, my old head,
Yeah,
is McNaught.
yeah.
Um,
But I do feel like everything about us really probably boils down to you're a McNaught person a little bit more, and I'm a Garwood person a little bit more.
I think that's probably true.
Right? Like if you were really like explain the nature of your differences.
Writing an essay about us.
Yes. But one likes Garwood, one likes McNaught, and if you know, you know, right?
And like this morning, I had a minor panic attack, and I literally was just like, I'm just gonna get a quick hit of a Kingdom of Dreams, like just to take the edge off.
Sure, of course.
But actually, I would say, and this is, I'm sure you won't be surprised to hear this, but my favorite historical romance novelist is Lorraine Heath.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it's because she is modern in a lot of ways. Like she tells a really modern story.
Yeah.
But she is fearless.
Yeah.
About the things that she chooses to write.
Yes.
And I think
all gas, no brakes.
All gas, no brakes. I've never read a Heath that I couldn't get through in 6 hours.
Yeah.
And I feel like she is somebody who I admire. I admire her as a person. I admire her as a writer. I admire her attention to craft. And also I feel like every time I read one of her books, I think like, if only I could be as fearless as this woman is. So I think as a writer, she is a favorite.
Yeah.
For me.
This is a really funny question. Someone asked for my favorite Ohio-based romance.
Do you have an answer for this?
I do. Okay. When I was a young romance reader, Janet Daly did this thing, which I was really fascinated with, which is she was writing a book in every state. And I remember really being like, no one would ever write a book set in Ohio because is this the most boring place in God's creation? Then I found out Toni Morrison was from Ohio and was like, okay, well, fine. I guess if Ohio's good enough for Toni Morrison, it's good enough for me. Yeah, I mean,
if I were Ohio, I would put Toni Morrison on every billboard.
Yeah, right. No, totally. Like, Ohio, birthplace of Toni Morrison, right? Okay, I'm talking about Ohio books now. And Beloved then is, right, when she has crossed the Ohio River. She's crossed from Kentucky to Ohio. And, I was always fascinated with the idea that, and I mean, the book is as well, right? Like, there's such a thin line between memory and present in Beloved. And there's such a thin line between like being free and being not in Beloved. And it's, that river that defines those places. But so for me, though, the Janet Daly, okay, that was like a weird digression, but it's Ohio. Sorry, I have to talk about Toni Morrison. The Ohio book for Janet Daly was very disappointing to me. I don't remember what it was.
Well, so what it's worth, Janet Daly is very disappointing. Yeah. We do not recommend her.
Sure, but
plagiarism is bad.
Yeah, right? Plagiarism is bad. Okay, and this is like, I think says something about me too, which is I read the book and realized that this book was set in Ohio, like in name only. It was a businessman in Cleveland or whatever. And so it just gave a nod.
She didn't care.
But she didn't care about Ohio. It wasn't really about Ohio, right? So the first romance, though, that I ever read that was really set in Ohio was Jenny Cruzy. It was Welcome to Temptation. It opens with these two sisters who are sort of con artists. And they're driving into this like really small Ohio town, kind of run by this mayor who is holding off like a bunch of bigots who have cheaped out, and they were too cheap to buy the right kind of paint for the water tower. And so now it looks like a huge giant cock in the middle of town. And I found myself really feeling like this is a woman who understands Ohio and Ohioans, right? And, Bet Me and all of her, like most of her books were set in Ohio. But I remember Welcome to Temptation feeling like I recognize these people. Like I recognize these characters in some very specific and meaningful way as being the kind of people, not like the main characters, but like the cast of characters, as being like the kind of people that I knew that were like my mom's friends and whatever. So I still would say that like Welcome to Temptation probably is and Bet Me, but like Welcome to Temptation is like the answer of my heart, because it was the first time I read a book and really thought like, this lady really knows Ohio. Emily Henry famously lives in Cincinnati. There are obviously other Ohioans writing romance, but like Jenny Cruzy.
Yeah, but I don't think Emily is thinking about Ohio. I think there is a certain kind of writer, and I'm not putting judgment on this, like value judgment on it, but I think there is a certain kind of writer who cares a lot about setting.
Yes.
I think I care a lot about setting, and I can recognize it in a lot of writers. I do think there's a difference between, like, for example, Emily in Beach Read, like that lake, that house, I can see it all in my head.
Right.
And like she clearly cares about setting there. But then I think there are people who like start with the setting and say like, what is this place? What does it look like? How does it work? What is its magic?
Yes.
And I mean that even outside of fantasy. Like, what is this place's magic? And I think Bet Me or Welcome to Temptation, what you're describing is that is the magic of Ohio.
Yeah.
Like what is the magic of Rhode Island is a question that like I try to answer in these contemporaries that are set there.
Right. Well, and I think like when I read Indigo for the first time.
Yeah. What is the magic of Hester's world?
Yeah, of Michigan. I really also key into setting a lot. I've lived in 6 different states. And I think that people who move around pay attention to the differences between places and the way you feel there.
And also because it feels like in each place you have to learn how to exist in that world.
Right.
What are the rules of this universe?
And I think the thing too for me is like some of the places I've lived, I've been really happy. And some of the places I've lived, I've been really miserable. And the idea that place doesn't matter is not something place does matter. Place matters deeply. I really believe that like where you are who you are because of where you are in a lot of ways. And you can like fight a place, right? You can make room for yourself any place. And there are cool people everywhere, right? There's no reason to think that like, as a child, I thought cool people only live in New York. No one ever cool lives in Ohio. Like I now know that's bullshit. There are cool people everywhere, but you cannot be happy everywhere. I think that's why I'm fascinated by like the idea, like, you go to a small town or you come back or you leave. Like these should be hugely transformative life events because they are. Right? Because they are. Any last one we want to do before we go?
Sex lessons. I love a sex lessons book. Me too. And I need more recommendations or maybe just a whole episode. Have we not done an episode on sex lessons?
We have it.
It's on our list because I love it so much.
Okay, I'm going to answer this and then maybe you have some off the top of your head. I feel like one of the things I've learned about myself all these years into the podcast is there are some books where you're like, okay, this is a time travel book. I'm going to know that in the blurb. But sex lessons is not often something that is like sort of like part of the inciting incident necessarily of the book. Like it's not going to be on the back cover copy. And so sometimes I forget that a book has that, right? Unless it's like a really big part of it. And so what I need to do is sort of have like a list of things I'm sort of looking for.
I've started this.
Right. And then you're like, oh, this book has sex lessons. I'm going to put this on this list. And then when we finally do the episode, which we will because we keep saying we should and you love it, then I'll have books like that I won't have to go hunting for those books. I will already have been sort of making that list.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
okay. My favorite, like pinnacle of pinnacle sex lessons book is a category called The Pleasure Principle by Jane O'Reilly. It's London set. It's an erotic novella. And the heroine is like, it's such a classic. Sometimes, okay. I'm a real basic bitch. And part of the reason why I know I am a basic bitch is because I don't need it to be complicated.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes the best romances are the ones where, like, it's just a clear, straight shot of concept, right? So this is a straight up, a heroine has a very sexy boss who throws sex parties at his house because this is what hot bosses do in London.
Sure.
And she is broken up with on like page 1 by her boyfriend, who is like, you're not good in bed. And so she decides she is going to go to one of her boss's hot sex parties and just like check it out.
Sure.
Like, and she'll go and he won't even notice she's there because he doesn't care about her. He's never looked at her twice, Jen.
Sure.
And then, of course, she gets there and he's like, what the fuck are you doing here? And she tells him, and then he's like, I'm going to teach you everything. And of course, she's great in bed. The boyfriend was the problem. And it's great and so fun. And that's The Pleasure Principle by Jane O'Reilly. Also, like, if you want something a little more cerebral, Helen Hoang's The Kiss Quotient is also sex lessons.
Yeah.
We talked about that on the podcast recently for some reason.
Yeah, I don't remember why, but we did.
Yeah. And that's like a bigger book. It has a more complicated setup.
Yeah.
But it's also delicious. She hires, the heroine is on the autism spectrum and is like in a place where she hires an escort to be her like fake boyfriend and also at the same time teach her sex lessons. And he has a sort of very complicated, this is another one for the person who asked earlier about like a book that grapples with sadness. Like he has a kind of family issue, but like these two are beautiful. It's a beautiful romance. It really, I mean, there is a reason why people talk about it like a modern classic.
Yeah, agree.
And those are my two sort of right off the head. Sure. And but I mean, I wrote one good Earl deserves a lover is a sex lessons book.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've probably written more than one, honestly, because I love them so much.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, like I said, this is a thing I love when I see it, but it doesn't like stick with me as being like a primary, because I feel like sex lessons is often like I said, it's not like the plot doesn't turn on it. When I like it best when it's the answer to something, right? I don't know how to say that, right? You know what I mean? Like a character has decided they have a problem, and then or a problem has like risen up, like right, like my boyfriend treats me this way or whatever. And I think often in my brain that turns into like, well, this is a person who's struggling with, like sort of feeling good about themselves or whatever. And that plays out so many ways, not just because of how you are in bed with somebody. So yeah.
I just like it.
Yeah, of course.
Period. It's fun, and we should do it. There's also another request for a possible episode in this list, and I love it so much that we will definitely do it. But I'm not even going to talk about it because we'll just tee it up for a future episode, which we're always looking for.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we did the job.
We did the job.
Everyone, we love talking to you. We wish that we spent more time with you. But if you ever have questions for us, you can always ask them on No, we're not on Facebook.
We really aren't.
But
no,
I don't know why I said that. You could you can always ask them on Instagram or Threads or Blue Sky. On Instagram and Threads, we are Fated Mates Pod, and on Blue Sky, we're Fated Mates. You can also join our Patreon at patreon.com/fatedmates, and that gives you access to the Discord, where there is an Ask Jen and Sarah channel. There's also an Ask Eric channel in there. And
or Oregon Classics coming your way.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what you'll get in that channel, but so you can always head over there and do that, or shoot us, I don't know, message us, smoke signals, semaphore.
I don't even know what that means.
It's the flag one.
Oh, sure.
Did you ever watch Monty Python as a kid?
With your brother? Apparently not enough.
Yeah, there was it's a whole joke on Monty Python semaphore. Anyway, I'm Sarah McLean. I am here quite literally with my friend Jen Prokop, and we are Fated Mates. Like I said, you can find us wherever you get your podcast every Wednesday. And all the books that we talked about today and anything else that we sort of generally talked about that has links or more information will be available to you on our website at fatedmates.net. And you can just click on episodes and you'll find this episode, a list of all the books, and other links in show notes. And that's it. Happy April. Happy April, everyone. I hope you're off, getting a quick hit of Judith McNaught, if that is what will give you joy.
And if it's raining, flowers coming soon.
Oh, yeah. May flowers.